The Politeness of Princes by P.G. Wodehouse. The painful case of G. Montgomery Chapel, bachelor of Seymour's house. Riken, let us examine and ponder over it. It has been well said that this is the age of the specialist. Everybody, if they wish to leave the world a better and happier place for their stay in it, should endeavor to adopt some speciality and make it their own. Chapel's speciality was being late for breakfast. He was late not once or twice, but every day. Sometimes he would scramble in about the time of the second cup of coffee, buttoning his waistcoat as he sidled to his place. Generally, he would arrive just as the rest of the house were filing out, when, having lurked hidden until Mr. Seymour was out of the way, he would enter into private treaty with Herbert the factotum, who had influence with the cook for something hot, and maybe a fresh brew of coffee, for there was nothing of the amateur late breakfaster about Chapel. Your amateur slinks in with blushes, deepening the naturally healthy hue of his face, and bolting a piece of dry bread, and gulping down a cup of cold coffee, dashes out again, filled more with good resolutions for the future than with food. Not so Chapel. He liked his meals. He wanted a good deal here below, and wanted it hot and fresh. Conscience had but a poor time when it tried to bully Chapel. He had it weak in the first round. But there was one more powerful than conscience, Mr. Seymour. He had marked the constant lateness of our hero, and disapproved of it. Thus it happened that Chapel, having finished an excellent breakfast, one morning, some 20 minutes after everybody else was informed, as he sat in the junior day room, trying with the help of an illustrated article in a boy's paper to construct a handy model steam engine out of a reel of cotton, and an old notebook, for his was in many ways a giant brain, that Mr. Seymour would like to have a friendly chat with him in his study. Laying aside his handy model steam engine, he went off to the housemaster's study. "You were late for breakfast today," said Mr. Seymour in the horrid, abrupt way housemasters have. "Why, yes, sir," said Chapel pleasantly. "And the day before?" "Yes, sir." "And the day before that?" Chapel did not deny it. He stood on one foot and smiled a propitiating smile. So far Mr. Seymour was entitled to demand a cigar or coconut every time. The housemaster walked to the window, looked out, returned to the mantelpiece, and shifted the position of a china vase 2¼ inches to the left. Chapel, by way of spirited repartee, stood on the other leg, and curled the disengaged foot round his ankle. The conversation was getting quite intellectual. "You will write out?" "Sir, please, sir," interrupted Chapel, in an irrepresent defendant mud tone of voice. "Well, it's awfully hard to hear the bell from where I sleep, sir." Owing to the increased numbers of the house, this term Chapel had been removed from his dormitory proper to a small room some distance away. "Nonsense, the bell can be heard perfectly well all over the house." There was reason in what he said. Herbert, who woke the house of a morning, did so by ringing a bell. It was a big bell, and he enjoyed ringing it. Few sleepers, however sound, could dream on peacefully through Herbert's morning solo after 5 seconds of it. They would turn over uneasily after 7. They would sit up at the end of the first quarter of a minute. They would be out of bed, and you would be wondering where they picked up such expressions. Chapel murmured wordlessly in reply. He realized that his defense was a thin one. Mr. Seymour followed up his advantage. "You will write 100 lines of Virgil," he said, "and if you are late again tomorrow, I shall double them." Chapel retired. This, he felt, was a crisis. He had been pursuing his career of unpunctuality so long that he had never quite realized that a time might come when the authorities would drop on him for a moment. He felt that it was impossible, that he could not meet Mr. Seymour's wishes in the matter, but the bulldog pluck of the true Englishman caused him to reconsider this. He would at least have a dash at it. "I'll tell you what to do," said his friend Brodie, when consulted on the point over a quiet pot of tea that afternoon. "You ought to sleep without so many things on the bed. How many blankets do you use, for instance?" "I don't know," said Chapel, "as many as they shove on." It had never occurred to him to reckon up the amount of his bedclothes before retiring to rest. "Well, you take my tip," said Brodie, "and only sleep with one on. Then the cold'll wake you in the morning, and y'all get up, because it'll be more comfortable than staying in bed." This scientific plan might have worked. In fact, to a certain extent, it did work. It woke Chapel in the morning, as Brodie had predicted. But it woke him at the wrong hour. It is no good springing out of bed when there are still 3 hours to breakfast. When Chapel woke at 5 the next morning, after a series of dreams, the scenes of which were laid mainly in the Arctic regions, he first sneezed, Then he piled upon the bed everything he could find, including his boots, and then went to sleep again. The genial warmth oozed through his form, and continued to ooze, until he woke once more, this time at 8:15 breakfast. Being at 8, it occurred to him that his position with Mr. Seymour was not improved, while he was devoting a few moments' profound meditation to this point. The genial warmth got in its fell work once again. When he next woke, the bell was ringing for school. He lowered the world's record for rapid dressing, and was just in time to accompany the tail of the procession into the form room. "You were late again this morning," said Mr. Seymour after dinner. "Yes, sir, I overslept myself, sir," replied Chapel, who was suffering from a cold in the head. 200 lines. "Yes, sir." Things had now become serious. It was no good going to Brodie again. For counsel Brodie had done for himself, proved himself a fraud, an idiot, in fine. A rotter. He must try somebody else. Happy thought Spenlow. It was a cold day. When Spenlow got left behind, he would know what to do. There was a chap for you if you liked, young, mind you. But what a brain. Colossal. "What I should do," said Spenlow, "is this: I should put my watch on half an hour." "What 'ud be the good of that?" "Why, don't you see, you'd wake up and find it was 10 to 8, say, by your watch, so you'd shove on the pace dressing and nip downstairs, and then find that you'd really got tons of time. What price that?" "But I should remember id, put my watch on," objected Chapel. "Oh no, probably not. You'd be half asleep, and you'd shoot out of bed before you remembered, and that's all you'd want. It's the getting out of bed that's so difficult. If you were once out, you wouldn't want to get back again." "Oh, shouldn't I?" said Chapel. "Well, you might want to, but you'd have the sense not to do it." "It's not a bad idea," said Chapel, "thanks." That night, he took his Waterbury, prized open the face with a pocket knife, as if he were opening an oyster, put the minute hand on exactly half an hour, and retired to bed satisfied. There was going to be no nonsense about it this time. I am sorry to disappoint the reader, but facts are facts, and I must not tamper with them. It is therefore my duty to state, however reluctantly, that Chapel was not in time for breakfast on the following morning. He woke at 7 o'clock. When the hands of the watch pointed to 7:30, primed with virtuous resolutions, he was just about to leap from his couch, when his memory began to work, and he recollected that he had still an hour. Punctuality, he felt, was an excellent thing, a noble virtue, in fact, but it was no good overdoing it. He could give himself at least another half hour, so he dozed off. He woke again with something of a start. He seemed to feel that he had been asleep for a considerable time, but no, a glance at the watch showed the hands pointing to 25 to 8, 25 minutes more. He had a good long doze, this time. Then, feeling that now he really must be getting up, he looked once more at the watch, and rubbed his eyes. It was still 25 to 8. The fact was that, in the exhilaration of putting the hands on, he had forgotten that other, and even more important operation, winding up the watch, had stopped. There are few more disturbing sensations than that of suddenly discovering that one has no means of telling the time. This is especially so when one has to be in a certain place, by a certain hour. It gives the discoverer a weird, lost feeling, as if he had stopped dead, while all the rest of the world had moved on at the usual rate. It is a sensation not unlike that of the man who arrives on the platform of a railway station, just in time to see the tail end of his train disappear. Until that morning, the world's record for dressing set up the day before had been 5 minutes 23 and a fifth seconds. He lowered this by 2 seconds and went downstairs. The house was empty. In the passage that led to the dining room, he looked at the clock, and his heart turned a somersault. It was 5 minutes past 9. Not only was he late for breakfast, but late for school too. Never before had he brought off the double event. There was a little unpleasantness in his form room when he stole in at 7 minutes past the hour. Mr. Dexter, his formaster, never a jolly sort of man to have dealings with, was rather bitter on the subject. "You are incorrigibly lazy and unpunctual," said Mr. Dexter. Towards the end of the address, "You will do me 100 lines." "Oo, sir," said Chapel, but he felt at the time that it was not much of a repartee. After dinner, there was the usual interview with Mr. Seymour. "You were late again this morning," he said. "Yes, sir," said Chapel. 200 lines. "Yes, sir." The thing was becoming monotonous. Chapel pulled himself together. This must stop. He had said that several times previously, but now, he meant it. Nor poppy, nor mandragora, nor all the drowsy syrups of the world should make him oversleep himself again. This time he would try a combination of schemes. Before he went to bed that night, he put his watch on half an hour, wound it up, and placed it on a chair at his bedside. Then he seized his rug and all the blankets except one and tore them off then. He piled them in an untidy heap in the most distant corner of the room he meant to put temptation out of his reach. There should be no genial warmth on this occasion. Nor was there. He woke at 6 feeling as if he were one solid chunk of ice. He put up with it in a torpid sort of way. Till 7 then, he could stand it no longer. It would not be pleasant getting up and going downstairs to the cheerless junior day room, but it was the only thing to do. He knew that if he once wrapped himself in the blankets, which stared at him invitingly from the opposite corner of the room, he was lost. So he crawled out of bed shivering, washed unenthusiastically, and he proceeded to put on his clothes. Downstairs, it was more unpleasant than one would have believed possible. The day room was in its usual state of disorder. The fire was not lit. There was a vague smell of apples. Life was very, very gray. There seemed no brightness in it at all. He sat down at the table and began once more the task of constructing a handy model steam engine. But he speedily realized what he had suspected before, that the instructions were the work of a dangerous madman. What was the good of going on living when gibbering lunatics were allowed to write for weekly papers? About this time, his gloom was deepened by the discovery that a tin labeled mixed biscuits, which he had noticed in Brody's locker, was empty. He thought he would go for a stroll. It would be beastly, of course, but not so beastly as sitting in the junior day room. It is just here that the tragedy begins to deepen. Passing out of Seymour's gate, he met Brooke of Appleby's. Brooke wore an earnest, thoughtful expression. "Hello, Brooke," said Chapel. "Where are you off to?" It seemed that Brooke was off to the carpenter's shop, hence the earnest, thoughtful expression. His mind was wrestling with certain pieces of wood, which he proposed to fashion into photograph frames. There was always a steady demand in the school for photograph frames, and the gifted were in the habit of turning here and there an honest penny by means of them. The artist's soul is not always unfavorable to a gallery. Brooke said he didn't mind if Chapel came along, only he was to go rotting about or anything, so Chapel went along. Arrived at the carpenter's shop, Brooke was soon absorbed in his labors. Chapel watched him for a time with the interest of a brother worker, for had he not tried to construct handy model steam engines in his day? Indeed, yes. After a while, however, the RTLE of spectator began to pall. He wanted to do something. Wandering round the room, he found a chisel, and upon the instant, in direct contravention of the treaty respecting rotting, he sat down and started carving his name on a smooth deal board, which looked as if nobody wanted it. The pair worked on in silence, broken only by an occasional hard breath. As the toil grew exciting, Chapel's tongue was out and performing mystic evolutions. As he carved the letters, he felt inspired. He was beginning the A when he was brought to earth again by the voice of Brooke. "You are an idiot," said Brooke complainingly. "That's my board, and now you've spoilt it." Spoilt it? Chapel liked that. Spoilt it, if you please, when he had done a beautiful piece of carving on it. "Well, it can't be helped now," said Brooke philosophically. "I suppose it's not your fault you're such an ass. Anyhow, come on now, it's struck 8. "It's what?" gasped Chapel. "Struck 8, but it doesn't matter. Appleby never minds one being a bit late for breakfast." "Oh," said Chapel. "Oh, doesn't he? Go into Seymour's at 8 sharp any morning, and look down the table, and you will see the face of G. Roman 1000. Chapel obscured every now and then perhaps by a coffee cup or a slice of bread and marmalade. He has not been late for 3 weeks. The spare room is now occupied by Postlethwaite of the upper fourth, whose place in Milton's dormitory has been taken by Chapel. Milton is the head of the house, and stands alone among the house prefects for the strenuousness of his methods in dealing with his dormitory. Nothing in this world is certain, but it is highly improbable that Chapel will be late again. There are swagger sticks.